Okay, it is another beautiful night here in the shop, and we're gonna start getting these control arms together. So if you've never done these flex joints from Iron Rock, they're really simple to put together. They look kind of complicated, but when you break them down, they're really not. So I'm gonna show you how to install these properly. I did remove them from the actual control arm themselves. It does come with some anti-seize, but I think it needs some more just in case. And so that's why it's removed. I don't know where my anti-seize is. Crap. Here it is. Really all that you need is just some grease. And what I like to do first is just go ahead and coat the uniball right here. I like to get all the surfaces covered. Just like that. All right, and I'll do the same thing to these. You just don't want any dry spots. So that's basically how it works. These caps right here, they hold the uniball, and you got to line them up. You got to line them up so that way the bolt can run through it. Just like that. So I'll pop this in just like so. Just like that. And then I'll take this one and I just want to line up the bolt holes just like so. And now I'll take these washers with the holes in them, line those up. I'm gonna go ahead and drop a bolt in. See, it goes all the way through to that side. Then you just take this side, line it up, and then they have these lock nuts right there with the nylon in them, and they go on just like that. I'm just going to get these started. So, and what's cool is whenever it gets to right here, you don't have to put a wrench on it because the outside actually holds the nut still. So that's a pretty cool design there. So now I'm just going to get all of these just hand tight in a crisscross pattern. That way you just want everything to get cinched down equally. You don't want to, torque these down and these still be loose. You just want to get everything down equally. So now that I have them all started and they're all hand tight, I'm just going to come in and just snug them up. And I'm just verifying that it's still good and movable. It's not binding or anything like that. So now you need a inch-pounds torque wrench, and we're gonna go to 50 inch-pounds. And once again, it's gonna be in a star pattern. And then once they're at 50, I like just to go back over and just verify that they're all at 50. So I'm getting a little bit more of a turn out of them. And so these flex joints are at an angle. You see, this is not 90 degrees. It actually banks over just a little bit. So just keep that in mind whenever it goes up underneath the Jeep. This needs to be facing down. So just remember that whenever you're putting these together. All right. Oh. So I verified that it is accepting grease. You can see it's come out all around it, which is what we want. So now I know that grease can get to all of those passages on the inside. I'm just gonna kind of wipe this off like that. So now we're gonna re-torque this to 55 inch-pounds. 55 inch-pounds. So it's not that bad, it's just a little time consuming. But you just want to make sure you get this right. This isn't something you just want to, you don't want to just hit this with the impact. If so, you're probably going to rebuilding it sooner than you want to. And what I like about these is they are super inexpensive and easy to rebuild. So basically, you know, if the customer comes back to me in a couple years saying like, hey man, I think, you know, I never got around to greasing those joints or something, they need to be rebuilt. All I have to do is literally take the bolt out, drop it, and replace it right there. So this one is all good to go. I'm just gonna hit everything with anti-seize, and then I got to figure out the measurements. But I'm gonna go ahead and get anti-seize and go ahead and get these set up. Up underneath the Jeep, I need to go ahead and start drilling holes for the cross member that's gonna be supporting the four-link. And per the instructions, you have to go 12 inches from the center of this bolt, that from the four-link. You have to go to the center of this bolt 12 inches back. And I've already, to be honest with you, I've already marked it, but I'll show you. So just go center of this bolt 12 inches. So just make sure you mark it correctly. And then what I like to do, or what I'm going to do, is I'm going to mark the center of this hole. Just like that. And then I'm actually going to start it with this little step bit, or you could just use a pilot bit, but this you have to drill this out with a 7/16 drill bit. But I just want to make sure that this is perfectly centered and stays perfectly centered. So what I'm doing is underneath the vehicle drill press. Just use a jack stand, some old jack handles, and then just slowly line this up. I'm just going to put a little bit of pressure and start drilling. Now that I've got the hole drilled all the way through, I can come back with a 7/16 and just slowly start drilling it. Now I just have to do the same thing to the passenger side. On the inside of the unibody, once you drill all of the holes right here, you need to be able to fish these plates in, and what the instructions say is that you drill a 1-inch size hole inside of the unibody. That way you can fish these in, and then they'll fall perfectly right here and right here, and then you can have something to bolt on the cross member. So this is a lot stronger than, you know, if you were just drilling and tapping. You know, this is going to be pulling against the unibody and the unibody stiffener, so this is definitely going to be super strong. So as you see here, I got the 1-inch size hole, and I can easily feed this in, and then I can slide it over right above the holes. So now I got to do the same thing to the passenger side. So now that we have all the holes drilled, we hit them with some paint so they won't rust, and now we're going to bring the cross member up to the unibody, and then Iron Rock did provide some grade 8 hardware that we're going to be putting in. I got to get the washers. But basically we're just going to push this up to where everything lines up, and then we'll run these bolts in. We have the new 4-link mount all mounted up and torqued down with the grade 8 hardware. It was kind of a chore trying to get these bolts started, but we kind of figured out once you get one started, you can kind of use it to control the other one and get it started. And that way we just tightened everything up all together. And that looks really, really cool. I think it's awesome how close it is to the front 3-link mount. That is going to be nuts. So we've got the rear coil mount on the unibody. Now we're trying to line it up. It should line up with the existing bump stop bolts that go in right here. This one isn't lined up, but there's factory bump stop bolts that we're going to be using. And then it states in the directions that if you do not have unibody stiffeners, you have to use, I think there's some nut zerts somewhere. But we're not going to be using those because we got the unibody stiffeners. With the unibody stiffeners, you can drill and tap these, and that's how you bolt this on. So me and Patrick are trying to line it up because this, from the face plate right here to the old leaf spring perch, it was what, 16 and 3/8. 16 and 3/8. So that's what Patrick's doing. He's measuring it and just getting it squared up. All right, so we kind of had a change of plans. Instead of bolting it, what I did was I just cleaned everything down and ended up just welding everything. I just put some fresh weldable paint on there, and that's probably why it looks kind of weird, but the bolt holes I actually used for rosette welds, and then I welded it all the way around, welded it on the bottom, welded everything together. And so now this thing is not going anywhere. I welded it on the inside. Everywhere that contacted the unibody, I welded it. So now we're going to the control arm. So you have your lowers on the outside. So the lowers go to 43 inches and the uppers go to 35.5 inches. And I did take them all the way down and I ran anti-seize in all 4 of them. And what I did was I just put anti-seize in it and then ran them back and forth all the way down. That way I've got anti-seize on both sides of the threads. So now, I guess these are ready to go in the Jeep. So yeah, now we're gonna get these just kind of hanging underneath the Jeep, and then we're on to the rear axle. So we're putting the control arms in for the lowers. And you just want to verify that whenever the grease fittings are in, that they are facing down. So, see right there, grease fitting is facing down, and that the control arm is going to be pointed directly at the axle. And you also want to make sure, so these do have the offset right there, so you want to make sure that whenever it is connected to the axle, that there's equal spaces on both sides. It's not pulled one way like that, it's centered up. So now we're gonna get these uppers in.
Then what are you gonna do?
So this is everything that I have to weld onto the axle. If you're not familiar with all of these parts, you have your inner truss, you have your outer truss, you have your 4-link mounts for the top. It's gonna be mounted to this bracket right here. And it's really nice because it does have a lining hole or an alignment hole, and it's got an alignment hole right there. Got the shock tabs, we've got the coil spring perches, and then we have the lower control arm mounts. So this may look like a lot, but realistically it's not. So once it starts going on, it'll make a lot of sense. So basically this piece goes, this will go right here. Of course I got to measure it and everything. And then this one will actually go on top of it. And then this will mount right there once I get that lined up with the hole. And then once I get that lined up, these pieces right here will go, see, it has a little tab right there. That little tab goes in that little slot. Look at that. And then this one right here, got to clean that one. It'll go, it's got the longer tab. It's a lot of stuff, but luckily Iron Rock provides all of the measurements and everything. So it basically tells you exactly where you need to put this stuff. So they've already done the homework. They've already took all the guesswork out of it. So the first thing that the instructions say to do is to take this T-block eliminator. It does come with the kit. And what this does is where the old T-block used to sit for the rear brakes, it's just gonna sit right here, and then that's gonna go into it right there. Just like that, and that's gonna be our axle tube vent. So I'm just gonna put some thread locker on that. Go ahead and get it in. And it does have, you can see it's got a little curve right there for the axle tube, so you can sit down just like that. Sweet. And one thing I kind of did before all of this is I painted the backside of underneath all of my trusses and everything that I'm not going to be able to get to. I've already hit those with a weldable spray paint, so just make sure you do that before you start tack welding anything onto the axle. Before I start any tack welding, I did a measurement and got the center line of the axle here, and so now that can be where I line up my alignment point on my truss. I'm going to tack weld the inner truss on, and I'm going to get the truss at the same degree as the actual differential itself. So I'm just gonna get this on here. So this is exactly where I want it right here. I've got to center it up just a little bit, and then we'll be able to tack this on. So now that we got this tacked on, I'm just gonna verify all my angles and everything, because if this one isn't right, then the rest of them aren't gonna be right. So we're good there. Now the instructions say I can go ahead and stitch weld this onto the axle. We're gonna now jump to the actual truss itself, and we're gonna work on getting this plate on right here. But before I do that, I need to fully weld these seams right there, because once this is on, you can't really get to them anymore. So I guess I could weld the backside, but I don't know. I'm just gonna go ahead and weld all of this up right here, and then we'll get this piece on. So I grinded everything down, that way the plate sits nice and flush. So now I'm just gonna take a random bolt that I found, and it just kind of goes in like that. That way, I can just put it up there like that, and it's perfectly square. I'm just gonna put a couple of tack welds on this, since I know that it is lined up exactly where I want it. You can see right there that the holes are perfectly lined up, and now this truss is ready to go to the axle. So I've got the truss exactly where I want it. It's set down right on that inner truss just like I wanted it to. And I did verify everything is in line, everything is lined up perfectly. So now I can tack this truss on. I've got some good meaty tacks on here. I know this truss isn't going anywhere. Now I'm going to clean these brackets up really good and get any of that coating off, or any oils and some surface rust or anything like that. And then we'll start tacking these on the other way. So the next thing that I'm going to work on is I'm going to get this, but I'm going to get these lower control arm mounts tacked on. And it looks like what you do is, so they are different. There is a driver and passenger side. They do kind of have a little taper right there. And this one is the passenger side that I'm going to start with. So I've got the axle at 14 degrees tilted back, which is probably the degrees it's going to be. That's going to be the ballpark of the degrees that it's going to be underneath the Jeep at ride height. And so the instructions say that this, so you find your center right there, hole right there is your center of the axle, and you measure 18¼ inches out from this center line, and that is going to be where you weld these on. So I've already marked mine, but I'm going from the center point right here, and I'm going to go all the way over, and I'm going to be right there at 18¼ and I've got them both marked right there so I know where they go. But now I've got to figure out what angle that they go, because if you weld the wrong angle, then the anti-squat, anti-dive in the rear is going to be all out of whack and it's going to perform like crap. So where the instructions say to put it is you get this at 14 degrees and then you actually bring this down 10 degrees. So I've got it right here at 18¼ and so like I said, I've got this at 14, and so now I just got to go down to basically make my gauge say 4 degrees. So I have these tacked into place. I probably measured these 1,000 times, it seemed like, just to make sure that they were correct. So I know this one was correct, and then I made sure that one was correct, and then I pulled measurements from everywhere. So I know these are correct, and so now I'm gonna go ahead and put some welds on top right here. Now that I have those fully welded on, I'm just probably gonna let it cool off a little while, and just because I don't want to heat up this axle too much. I just don't want to, start just do all my welding in one night. So I may let it sit 24 hours. But I think before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and tack these coil spring mounts on since I've already got them exactly where they need to be. This is the next night, and I came out here and figured out exactly where the shock tabs go. I ended up looking at the instructions a little bit closer, and it said just to zero these out with the coil springs pads right here, and that pretty much made sense. So I got them measured out where they needed to be and then got everything, all the degrees correct. So now this axle can technically go up underneath the Jeep. There's still some things that I have to do. I still have to run a hard line across this truss, but I think I can do that once the axle is up underneath the Jeep here. So now I'm going to carefully slide this cart up underneath the Jeep and see if we can start getting some of these links on. So I don't have it exactly centered up underneath the Jeep. I've got to I'm gonna let the control arms center it up. So I'm going to just one control arm at a time, just get them in. And I'm going to be using the hardware that came with the Iron Rock off-road kit. And yeah, so we'll go ahead and get all the bolts in the 4-link. So I'm gonna start with the uppers, getting the uppers in just because they're kind of in the way of the lowers. And it does come with 2 different size bolts right here. So the shorter ones go in the top and the longer ones go in the lower control arms. So I have all the bolts in the 4-link here. They all went in pretty smooth once I got the axle centered. The next thing I'm going to work on is getting the bump stops in. And the kit does come with everything that you need. It comes with the isolator, it comes with the isolator bushing right there, and then it comes with several different options. And honestly, I'm just going to maybe stack 2 of these options right here. For right now, I may have to adjust it once I get the tires on it and, you know, do some flexing and testing and stuff like that. But for now, I'm just going to do an estimated guess and just go this route right here, and that just threads on like that. That bug jumped on the bump stop while I was spinning it. But now I'm going to take a 3/4 inch wrench and go ahead and torque this down. Also, you have to put the rubber bump stop up in here, just like that. I got my dad in here tonight. I recruited him helping me. So now we're getting the coil spring in, and we've got to get the coil spring retainers in the bottom. And Iron Rock has already got all that figured out also. You have these 2 plates right here. They will drop in. See, there's a hole right there. And that just drops in perfectly inside the spring there. And so then you take this one right here and you just kind of line it up the best that you can. And what you're looking for is you want as much contact on this spring as possible on these little tabs. And so as you tighten it down, these tabs will actually bend up, and that's just getting a better bite on this coil spring so that it won't come out. And so then you take this carriage bolt right there that has a square piece and drop that in. And it drops in just like that, and then you put a nut on the bottom right there with a washer, and that's pretty much everything for the coil springs right there. Well, I'm gonna make my dad do the same thing to this side. All right, so it started throwing down rain. But now that I have the coil springs in, I'm going to work on getting these the Trail Tamer 2.0s for the rear of this thing in. These things are super beefy. Holy crap. So I'm going to go ahead and get these in. That way I can pick the Jeep up and get that cart out from underneath it. So we're no longer going to be using the factory shock mounts. We're going to be using the ones on this cross member right here. And that's really cool. So what these do is they just slide up just like that. That was easy.
That was easy.
And then on the bottom of the axle, these are actually outboarded right here, so they are just going to go in just like this. Oh, that was so rewarding. So now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side and go ahead and get these snug down. I'm not going to torque them down just yet, but I'm going to get them just tight enough for right now. So now that I have the Jeep on its own weight, I can go to the clamps on the control arms and just get these bolts and cinch down the clamps there. And I am going to be putting some anti-seize on those, but you don't want to put these on, or I don't like to put these on until it's on its own weight, and I know that Everything is where it's supposed to be. I've gone around and just double measured, checked my pinion angle. Everything seems fine. So with the 4 links, you don't have a track bar to center the axle. The control arms actually center the axle. So whenever I lowered it down, I bounced on it a couple of times, and then I went and checked to make sure that that axle was centered underneath the vehicle, and it was. So that basically means that you did it right. So now I'm gonna go up underneath the Jeep and get these jam nuts in and go ahead and tighten these up.